Hi, everybody. Module 1, Session 2. That means that we are just now getting started on our Unit 3 math, which is going to mostly be about figuring out how to estimate and round your numbers for this first couple of lessons. So let's get started. Rounding 22 to the nearest 10 using a number line. So number lines are super, super helpful when you are rounding because they make you think about what are the tens that you are between. So in this case, we're rounding the number 22. It is going to be between 20 and 30. And we know that the number exactly in between is the number 25. And we know that 22 is a smaller number than 25. So 22 is probably around here on the number line. We could say 20, 21, 22. And then we have two more numbers, 23 and 24. So this shows us visually that the nearest 10, and whenever we talk about rounding to the nearest 10, we're talking about rounding to a number that has a 0 in the ones place. And that is the number for this, in this case, 20. So if you said round 22 to the nearest 10, you would round it to 20. Let's try another one. Now we're going to look at using the base 10 blocks. So you guys know that this is 10 and this is 20. So 10, 20, 21, 22. And if you're going to round this to the nearest 10, you think to yourself, do I need to add a couple more to get to 30? Or should I just take these away? And the answer is that since it's only 2, you take away 2 and you end up with 20. Let's see. Now we are going to think about a bigger number. Oops, let's see if we can move on to the next slide. So now we're going to think about how do you round a big number like 232 to the nearest 10 using base 10 blocks. And I know it's tricky because you look at this and you think, oh my goodness, look at all that. Well, you know what? Most of the time that is going to stay the same. So these are hundreds. These are your 200s, 100, 200. That number is going to stay the same. And then you have your 10, 20, 30, 31, 32. So this is what your 232 looks like using base 10 blocks. And again, you're thinking, is this number, so 32 is in the tens. We're thinking about, are we rounding this number to 30 or are we going to round this to 40? Because 40 is the next 10. I'll show you on a number line what that looks like. Here's 230 and 240. And here is 232 on the number line. And again, we can draw in the midpoint, which is 235. Oops, 35. And you can see that since 232 is closer to 230, you would say that 232 rounded to the nearest 10 is 230. And we can go back to the base 10 blocks and we can say, okay, we just need to take away these two ones, and 232 rounded to the nearest 10 is still 230. So we'll look at that on the number line again. And now let's move on to rounding 85. 85s are the tricky number because they are right in the middle of the two tens. So we have 85, it's between 80 and 90. Whenever you have a 5, you round up. So 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 round down to the nearest 10, and 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 in the ones place round up to the higher 10. So this is going to round up to 90 because it has a 5 in the ones place. Whenever you're rounding, you're always thinking about what is in that spot, right? What is in the place value spot that is before the one you're looking at? Since we're thinking about tens, we have to look at what's in the ones place in order to know which 10 to round it to. Rounding. So here's a cute little poem. So remember this one. Find the place, that means the place value. Look next door, that's the one right next to it. 5 or bigger, add one more. 4 or less, let it rest or stay. So if you're rounding to the nearest 10, you're looking at, that's the place. You're looking at the ones place. If it's 5 or more, you round up to the next 10. So you add a 10. If it's 4 or less, let it rest. It just stays the same. You block off the ones. So here are some examples. 10. So if you have 0 in the tens place, but you have a 5, you round up. 5 or more, you add 1. So you end up with 10. If you have number 2 and you're rounding to the nearest 10, you round down. Well, you stay the same. There's 0 in the tens place, so this number would be 0. If you have hundreds, then you are looking at the hundreds and the tens. And then you look at your ones again and you say, okay, is that 5 or more? Yes. That means that this number in the tens place you add 1 to. So add a 10, 140. When you're looking at rounding to the nearest 100, you're going to think about whether or not the hundreds place it stays the same or you add 1, and the number you need to look at to figure out that is the number in the tens place this time. So in this case, 134, you're looking at the tens place, and 3 is 4 or less. So this number, 134, rounded to the nearest 100 is 100. 187, rounded to the nearest 100, is 200 because 187, the 8 is 5 or more. So you're going to add 1 to that and you have 200. Let's round. I'm going to give you some time. So this slide, you are going to think about using your own brain power and what you know about rounding. You're going to click on the spot next to each number and you're going to round those numbers. So 32, again, we're thinking we're rounding to the nearest 10. So rounding to the nearest 10 means this number is going to be either 30 or 40. When you round 67 to the nearest 10, your answer is going to be 60 or 70. In order to figure it out, you have to look at the ones place. 44, your answer is going to be either 40 or 50 because 44 is between 40 and 50. For 19, you have to think, what are the tens? What two tens is this between? Well, you know it's between 10 because it tells you right there it has one 10. And the next 10 is 20. This number is between 10 and 20. So your answer is going to be either 10 or 20. 103, what is in the tens place? 0. So your answer is going to be either 100 or the next 10 is 110. The answer for this one will either be 120 or 130 because 25 is between 20 and 30. Okay, so today you're going to be working on some pages in your Home Connections book and in your student book. You can work on these slides as well if you choose to do that. You're going to work on slide number 9, 10. That is page 77 in your student book. Let's see. Sarah has 35. You're going to make something in her top drawer. She has 28 somethings in her bottom drawer. How many are there in all? So these are two words. I could have Sarah has 35 pencils in her top drawer and she has 28 markers in her bottom drawer. How many are there in all? You're going to add that. And this is where you're going to show your work. Do the same thing for number 2, number 3, 4, and 5. So you're making up word problems and solving them yourselves. And then in your Home Connections book on page 43, you have a couple of number lines that you can work on in order to work on rounding to the nearest 10. So this is your example. In this case, they showed you that you're rounding 127 to the nearest 10. So first of all, you find it on your number line. 127 is between 120 and 130. So your answer is either 120 or 130, whichever is the number is closest to. So you're going to do that for each of these, 78, 75, and 74. You can use this number line to help. And then you're going to work on number 2, same thing. Use the number line, draw it right in there, and then round these numbers to the nearest 10. You look at the digit in the ones place to figure out whether or not you're going to keep the tens place the same or add 1. And then number 4 and 5 are word problems that you're going to work on. Those are in your Home Connections book. All right, have a good time.